Welcome back to Sick, Sad, Lit, the show where we explore the messy, miraculous work of rebuilding a life and creating art in a world that does not always make sense. Today, I'm joined by our first non-fiction guest, the lovely and brutally honest Lauren McQuistin, Scottish writer, musician, and creator of the beloved Brutal Recovery community over on Instagram. Lauren's debut book, No Lost Causes Club, released in July, and it's already becoming a defining text for a new generation of people rethinking their relationship with alcohol. Lauren trained as an operatic soprano, performing across Europe and North America, and her research on trauma's impact on the voice has been published in the Journal of Singing. She now brings that same mix of artistry, rigor, and vulnerability to her writing and to her work as a trauma-informed music educator. In this conversation, we talk about her journey through addiction and early recovery, the emotional whiplash of feeling everything at once, the rawness of navigating friendships, dating, and nights out sober, and the relief that comes from learning that you don't need chaos to be interesting. We talk about literature as a lifeline, the cultural shifts happening around sobriety, and the way recovery can feel like a second adolescence. Confusing, hilarious, and occasionally catastrophic, but mostly deeply liberating. We talk about what it means to choose agency when numbness feels easier, about the power of small decisions, and about rediscovering joy, real joy, in connection with community and being fully present in a world that can feel pretty apocalyptic. This isn't a dramatic rock bottom story. It's about building a life that you don't need to escape from. Also, on a personal note, this conversation with Lauren, we ended up talking for like 2 hours, and I really struggled to edit this episode down to like a reasonable length because I've been sober myself for almost 5 years now. And so Lauren's story particularly resonated with me, and that, as you'll hear, there are a lot of parallels between her experience and my own. So without further ado, let's get into it. Would you mind introducing yourself to our listeners and telling us a little bit about yourself for those who aren't familiar with your work?
My name is Lauren McQuistin. I am the author of No Lost Causes Club, which is kind of a contemporary guide to recovery. It's not like this is how you get sober book. It's kind of more of a, here, if you want to make a change in your life, here's what to expect. So it's kind of like, just going through all the areas of a change and kind of shining a light on the things that we don't really talk about in recovery. I started my career, shall we say, as an opera singer, which is such a weird, that is so funny. Like the line of questioning that I get after that, if people don't know me, are like, what? Like that's a job, like a job. You can get paid for that. Yes, you can. You do not get paid a lot. That's why I don't do it anymore. And yeah, so I decided to transition into an area of work where you get paid less, but the satisfactions of being a writer are a lot more than being an opera singer, I would say, because I just, from running my Instagram account, Brutal Recovery, I just realized that all I want to do with my life is reach out to people who, are interested in getting sober or are sober and feel like a little bit alienated or are on a sort of recovery journey and feeling like they're getting worse. And I just want to be that person from my own experience of recovery to be like, hey, it's hard and that's okay. Because by nature it's hard.
I wish your book existed when I first got sober, because I have been following you for years, because I stopped drinking about 4.5 years ago, and it was like a very big, a significant thing in my life. Like I was a huge drinker. I consider myself a high functioning alcoholic still, even though I haven't had a drop for years. I know that I definitely am, and that it's just never going to be an option for me. Like, it's just not even a question to introduce it back into my life, because it would be a disaster. So I wish I had your book there for me at the time. I think at the time, the only literature that I could really find was some real cheesy stuff. I read a lot because that's how I process the world. And the books that I read at the time, there was one, oh my God, it was the worst book of, it was so patronizing. It was called Kick the Drink Easily by Jason Vale. It was horrendous. And the worst part was not only was it just so patronizing, it was basically if you don't want to drink, just stop. It was at the end of every chapter, he finished it with an ellipses. an ellipses to like tease you into the next chapter. It was so painful. My God, it was bad. And I was like, is this as good as it's going to get? Bleak. It was so bleak.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's like why like that was one of my motivations for writing the book, because I really relate to what you say, that like, I have always processed the world through reading. Like I yeah, so I throughout like I tried to get sober for the first time at 19. Like it got bad very quickly for me. And then I eventually, got sober at age 25. That's when I could find like a sobriety that stuck. And in those like those 6 years, like I just read so many books, and I read like memoirs, and I loved the memoirs because because I was like looking at them and I was like, oh, these people are like really cool and they're sober. Like, because like one of my fears about getting sober is that like I wouldn't be cool anymore, which is, very indicative of like the age I was at the time. But yeah, like the kind of attitude of like, oh, don't worry, you'll get sober and everything will be amazing. And if you can't stop drinking, then why not? It's so amazing. Just stop drinking. And the thing that kept me coming back to drinking was just like the fact that, I was drinking to self-medicate. Like I was drinking because being alive felt intolerable. And I was drinking because I just felt everything too much. So when I stopped drinking, like did the one thing that everyone said, like, oh, this will make you feel great, I felt all of that. And I just lost my mind. And, maybe there was literature out there that spoke very transparently to that, but I wasn't in a place to receive it. And then I was kind of like, I had all of these ideas that like, people who you need to be like 40 and be in a custody battle to get sober. Like, there has to be like some big thing. Like the idea that my life was unbearable just didn't seem like a good enough reason. So yeah, like that's why I put it into the world, like exactly what you were just saying.
I really also feel like there was missing for me this like picture that I could relate to. Like you were saying, like it felt like everything that existed at the time was either like alcoholic where you're passed out on a park bench at 8 in the morning on a weekday,
Hmm.
or just nothing super serious. The best one I read was The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober. That was kind of like the most poignant novel for me at the time. I also really liked Dry by Augustine Burroughs. That was really
Yeah.
excellent too. I loved it.
So when I first got sober, one of my mentors gave me two books. She gave me Liar's Club by Mary Carr, and Magical Thinking by Augustine Burroughs. And it's so funny because I was so delusional at the time. I was just like, why is she giving me these books? Like, like, that's so random. Like, why would she give me a book about magical thinking? Like, missing the point that like I'd lived like in this like magical thinking my whole life, and I still do. Like, I'm prone to like the magical thinking. But it's so funny. And I read those books and I was like, oh yeah, like I love Mary Carr. I think that she's then Lit is extraordinary as well. That book really helped me too. And yeah, like it is those like, I need, when we talk about sobriety, like we just need to talk about the realities that like, yes, it is the greatest and most joyful thing I've ever done. I literally write a gratitude list every morning and the first thing on it is waking up sober. But like, a sober life has everything that a life has. And sometimes life is very difficult. And when you're sober, you're choosing to feel it all. And that can be rough sometimes.
I agree, especially when you have been really heavily dependent on alcohol in those formative years of your life, I think,
Mhm.
because when you're learning how to move through the world and how to cope as an adult, and we didn't learn how to do that in a normal way. So
Mhm.
it's like now you have to basically go through an adolescence again of feeling your feelings. That was the most shocking thing to me, was like, man, it sucks. Like, feeling things sucks. I can see why people don't do this. Like, I just didn't go to parties for months because I realized
Mm.
how dumb they were. Like, I'd go and not drink, and like it got easier to go and not drink, but I was like, why am I here? Like, the chat sucks. Everybody else is drunk and they're just drinking because they don't know how to be here without it. So it's so weird.
When I first got sober, it's really interesting. I started listening to all the music that I listened to as a teenager. Like, and I didn't notice at first that like for some reason I was like, drawn to Midwest emo again. And I was just like, oh, it's so weird that like this is what I want to listen to right now. And then it kind of clicked like a couple of months later that I was like, oh, I'm a teenager right now. Like I'm literally just going through my adolescence again and learning how to like work that muscle of how to endure a human emotion and how to like connect with other people that I didn't get the first time around. So it's so funny. Like I was making a playlist for someone yesterday and I was going through all of my saved playlists and I could see the ones from like 2018 that I'd saved because it was like songs to cry to, BoJack Horseman and chill. Like it was proper that.
I love that BoJack was like your recovery show because BoJack has been my recovery show.
Seriously?
I read that was like you're joking.
Oh my God, I feel so like, oh my God. My like eternal flex will be that I got sober in the same year as BoJack Horseman because like the 2018 season was the year that I got sober, and the 2018 season was the season that he went to rehab. And I remember it coming out and being like, oh yeah, a new season of BoJack Horseman, here we go. This horse is so funny, and then just being like, wait a second. Has this always been about this? Again, it was that like delusion where I was like, man, this show is so funny, and then you watch it again and you're like, oh, yeah, it's still hilarious, which is a great function of the show. That like as you know, you can probably tell from the way that I write, like I do think that comedy and tragedy like do have that hand in hand thing. Again, that's my magical thinking. I'm kind of like, BoJack Horseman is for me. He got sober the same year as me. Like it's a horse that's not real. But it is real because it's like so many people who are in our position just feel it in a way that like I tried to watch it with my boyfriend and we were like slamming through it because I was like, no, you got to keep watching because like season 3 is really good. And you know, he was like, can we stop watching this now? This is actually really painful. Like I'm having like a really painful reaction to this. And I was like, what do you mean? Like this is great.
It's amazing.
It's like, don't you get it? And he's like, no, this is actually really, really, really difficult, like for me to watch.
So that's how normal people respond to a satirized trauma, I guess. I remember the first time I watched BoJack was after I'd left my abusive relationship and I was like holed up, like learning how to be myself. And that was in 2018, was when I binged as much of it. And then I rewatched it when I got sober. And I was in like a different head. I just love it. It's like my comfort show, and I don't know what that says about us.
Like honestly, someone asked me, like people ask me like all the time, like, oh, what's your comfort show? And my comfort shows are BoJack Horseman, House, and Attack on Titan. And people are just like, that comforts you. And I'm like, yeah, I feel very comfortable watching those things.
House is also one of my comfort shows. Freaking love House. I love House. So I've seen every episode ever. I love it.
Yeah, I've got like, so back when I was in university and I was in music school, but like I was always like, you know, I always wanted to be a writer. Like that was my kind of OG ambition, you know, kind of reading was one of my first, I don't want to call it an addiction, but it was my first thing that took me out of my physical experience, right? And that's like a lot of my, you know, people who struggle with addiction, like we have a strange relationship to time and our physical experience. And like reading was the first thing that I was just like, I don't have to be in this moment and I don't have to be in this body right now. And I really, you know, and then I found alcohol, right? And I was like, oh, this is way easier. Like, this is so much easier than, you know, reading. And that's why, like, the greatest thing in my sobriety was, like, falling in love with reading again, because I was like, oh, no, this is the person I've always been. But when I was in university and I was studying opera and I was absolutely obsessed with the fact that, you know, I was like, I'm gonna, you know, be this like strange bohemian writer who just like, you know, writes drunk and edits sober. And I never quite got to the editing sober phase. And you know, and then eventually you kind of don't get to the writing phase, you know, you just kind of stay in the drunk phase. And I remember that like there was this guy that I used to see and, you know, we were two people who were completely incapable of seeing each other as human beings. We just, we're there to kind of serve each other as another way to get out of the present moment and the physical experience. And I just remember sitting in his flat once, and it was like 2 p.m. and we were like smoking indoors. We were drinking red wine. I hated red wine, but it was all there was. So I was just like, I guess I'm just drinking this red wine now. And he said like, oh, do you want to watch House? And I was like, oh, I don't know what's House. Like, I don't get it. And he's like, oh, it's a medical drama. And I love medical dramas. So I was just like, ah, yeah, chuck it on. And then all of a sudden it was like Thursday next week. And I was just like, and this guy, I thought this guy was my muse. Like, I thought I was going to write like a book about our relationship and about how, like we had this, he was a musician as well. So I was just like, this is going to be like my story. And like the reason why our relationship is so complex and twisty is because like, this is the story. And the story was we smoked indoors, drank red wine and watched House like for a week, like without sleeping. That was the story. So it's like that whole thing of like, I was obsessed with like the tortured creative, right? Like, I've got to like have this like tortured life in order to create like art. And then I think the more you mature, the more you realize that like the tortured geniuses like create art like in spite of their addiction, as opposed to like because of those issues.
I feel like this is really why I gravitate towards the kind of books that I do, because like take Otessa Moshfegh, for example. She's been very open about how she writes because having a body feels intolerable to her. Like existing is intolerable. And so her books reflect that inner torment. And she's not an alcoholic or anything. Like she doesn't romanticize her pain the way that because I also did as well. Like I was just like that. I really was. Like when I was like 18, 19, and I was going to university at the time, I dropped out, as I did, like I dropped out of high school as well. But I dropped out of uni because I spent all day, every day smoking pot and knitting and watching reality TV, like watching the Criminal Channel or something, like CI Channel. And I thought that was really arty and cool and creative.
Mm-hmm.
And this like same vibe of just, there was always, it was like my whole personality was like built around an addiction of some sort. And yet, to your point, there are so many incredible creatives who process that difficulty actually in the act of writing or creating art of some sort.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that example as well, because it's like, I love the idea that, when I was performing opera, right, like I was doing that from like a really unhealthy place. Like I was kind of like, my opera career was like a scream for help. Like it was like a literal scream, right? Like I was on stage, like screaming. And, the more that I look back on that, the more I kind of think like, I wasn't putting my audience like in a fair position, because like, a real artist, kind of has to keep themselves safe. Like they have to be like, hey, like to make this ethical, like, and not like a freak show, or, like making an audience complicit in enjoying or engaging with like my self-harm. Because like, if I'm to go out on stage and just like, rupture my pain onto it, like, and then have this twisted relationship with the attention that it gives me, like, there's like a kind of self-harmy vibe there. With writing, like one of the things that I kind of vowed to do was like, I don't want to put people in that position again, where I'm kind of like, romanticizing my downfall, where I'm making people, like bear witness to my downfall. Please help me, but don't help me because I'm not in a position to be helped. I think it's so important in writing, for me at least, I can't speak for anyone else, that like I do it from a place that is, where I'm okay and I'm not depending on my audience or readers to make me feel okay. And there's certain things that I do write about, like I write about violence and abuse and alcoholism. I just want to write it from that place of me being safe, so it can be like a processing of my experience, but the writing itself isn't the process. Like I process it and then I like turn it into writing, rather than like making, because writing like in a way is very therapeutic, but the writing that I share is kind of like after that therapeutic process, if that makes sense. Like, does it,
Yeah,
because,
right.
yeah.
Like not a diary entry.
Right. Like that's for me. That's for me. Because like most of all, like I, be writing memoir, I don't necessarily I don't know if my writing is self-help because like it's more like kind of like here's what to expect. But someone's called it stealth help, and I was like, I could work with that. Like that's fine.
How are you feeling about the release of No Lost Causes Club? By the way, I never even see congratulations. So congratulations, very
Thank
belatedly. Very exciting. How does it feel now?
How does it feel? So I honestly feel like the last month I've felt everything, and I've kind of had to treat the last month like early recovery. And like an early recovery experience where you feel like you don't have any skin, and like your head is kind of bumping from obsession to obsession to obsession to obsession. Like I've just been feeling um I've been flipping obsessions between like what other people might think, or, oh my God, I said too much, or like, why did I put that anecdote in there? Like, and I've just been kind of ruminating a lot. So I've literally just had to treat myself like I'm 3 days sober again. And, to me, that means like really connecting with other people, connecting with myself, like making sure that my routines are okay. Just like, and I've done all like, when you're in early recovery and you kind of like do like, there's kind of this thing that happens in early recovery where like you have like little spurts of enthusiasm, like I'm going to learn the tarot, like I'm going to learn everything that there is to know about tarot, or I'm going to get really into rock climbing. Like I've been having little moments like that where I'm just like, but because I'm older now, I'm like I need to freeze my eggs. Like there's just been all of these like just because everything is so close to the surface. And I've been reading a lot of Melissa Fabos as well, just because the way that she writes about memoir is like why I wanted to write memoir. Like I having that spirit of helpfulness. And, I just read The Dry Season where she says that like, no matter what, I'm going to paraphrase, like no matter what like bad feeling comes out of, you telling your story, like it's never going to be as bad as having lived through it, which it's just 100% true in my experience. I've just been trying to think of like all of the, know, do you know what? Publishing a memoir is like kind of re-traumatizing in a way because like you need to like live through it all again, and going through those cycles and events and things without shame this time, or at least like being aware that like, oh, that bad feeling is shame and you can do something about that. It's grueling, but like it's very, very, very rewarding because people have been saying things like, wow, like this is the book I needed when I got sober. Like this is, all of the things that we didn't talk about that I wished we talked about. And, I don't think that my story is, going to save the world. I'm an Aquarius, like I really want to save the world. That's like my whole thing. But just kind of thinking like, you know what, if this helps and entertains 2 to 3 women, I'm going to be okay with that. So that's a long form answer to how it's been, but like it's such an insane experience. I've been like voice noting like everyone I've ever known who's written a book, just being like, I feel like this is just normal, and they've just been replying, okay, so welcome to hell. Like this is going to be the worst week of your life, and then it's going to feel fine. And I'm like now finally in like the feeling fine phase.
I think it's so amazing too. You're the first person I've interviewed who has published a nonfiction. Normally I interview fiction writers. So it's really interesting hearing the different experience because of course there's similarities in what I hear from them in terms of putting something so personal out there and something that you've made, a piece of art that you've poured your heart and soul into. And of course, in many cases, a lot of stories are drawn from real life experience, but it's not the same as literally publishing memoir. So I find that really fascinating, and especially something that's so personal in terms of it's a difficult struggle. I still think, even though we've come a long way, I'm sure you would agree, from when we first got sober, in terms of culturally how alcohol is viewed and the options now for non-drinkers, but it's still not 100% normalized, I guess, or it's like the only drug that you get pressured to take rather than not. It's definitely better than it was, but yeah, I think to put something out there that's a memoir as well as dealing with such a controversial topic, if you will, in terms of people would rather die than have their alcohol pried from their cold, dead
Right.
hands. I know in the UK as well as New Zealand, our drinking cultures are similar. Oh yeah, so it's really interesting hearing your take on that and what that's been like for you.
I mean, I really love that you see as well, like the amount of change, like in how people receive the fact that we're sober. Because like when I got sober in 2018, like it was, I I just get such a different reaction now. Like, I'd say to people, I'm actually in recovery. And this wasn't so much the case in America, because I think that they have like more awareness over that language. But I'd say to someone in the UK, like, I'm in recovery, and they would just be like, for what? Like, your Achilles tendon? Like, what? Like, what do you mean by that? But like now, I'll say that, to someone, and they'll immediately know what I mean. And yeah, just like the idea that, it was like when I said to people, oh, I'm getting sober, like, people saw that as like a very bizarre choice. Like there was the whole like, oh my God, you're so young, like you're supposed to be making these mistakes at this age. And that I'm not young anymore. I'm 32 now, but I still consider myself young. I will always be young at heart. But I know people who are getting sober now, even younger than 25, and are being met with more support. And I find that really, really, really incredible, because like I am not a prohibitionist. Like, I've got many drinkers in my life that have a very um I don't want to say normal, but like ordinary relationship with alcohol. Like, so like, I'm not like an evangelist that the whole world should be sober. Like, it's largely none of my business. But like, there are people that should be sober. Like, and I don't think that's controversial to say. And I am one of those people. Like you said, like at the start, like I don't wish for an ordinary relationship with alcohol, because I know that like that's not what I want from alcohol or drugs or any of these things. Like it has always been a tool for me to completely like obliterate my senses.
Girl, same. Me too. And I agree. My philosophy on drinking has always been that I should absolutely not do it because it will destroy me. But
Mm.
also, I do not judge anybody else, and I support them if they're sober curious, and I'll always be there to answer any questions for the sober curious. But I would never judge anybody based on where they're at their journey. Man, it's not easy to confront the reasons why you might be drinking and what that's actually covering up underneath. That is a tough journey. The weird questions I got asked, I remember at the start, people would say the most insane shit when I would tell them, like, but what about your wedding day? Bold of you to assume I'd get married in the first place, but also, like, what a question. Like, oh, guess I better not be sober then in case I want to drink on my wedding day? What the
That is such a like that really is it is so crazy. And that's one of the most pervasive ones. Like for some reason, like maybe it's I don't know, it just feels like so many people that I've spoken to got the same thing, and I got the same thing. And uh I don't know, like yeah, it's like everybody like at the time just, was giving me like all of these reservations of like, oh yeah, but here's why. But and I kind of realized like a lot of people took my sobriety personally, like the fact that I was making a decision. And I feel like, you know, I say this in No Lost Causes Club, but like other people's relationship with substances, alcohol, any of those things, like is none of my business. And a lot of the time, being confronted with someone who is addressing their issues can be really confronting for other people. And for me, in my friendship group at the time, a lot of whom I'm still very close friends with, I was always the worst one. Like I always would do the most embarrassing thing, or I would always, be the example of, yeah, just like, and here's someone who is too far gone. So when I got sober, a lot of people were a little bit freaked out by that. Like it was kind of just like, oh shit, like am I gonna be the next Lauren? Like, am I going to be the next, like, where am I on this scale or spectrum of this is what someone who needs to be sober looks like. And I feel like that, at least for me, permeates across society. Like I, grew up in Scotland where we're drinking culture, and it was always like every community had like the designated alcoholic, like, oh, I'm not bad because they're bad. And so it's one of the reasons why like I want to take like these kind of I talk about in the Lost Causes Club, like I don't think that recovery is like a before and after. It's not like oh, I was terrible then and I'm good now, because like I feel like that's just not helpful for how we like have these discussions around recovery and sobriety, like whether it's from drinking or substances or trauma, eating disorders. Like there's these ideas of like there's this grand before and after, and you post the before and after pics, and it's like, oh, look at this terrible mess. She was blah, blah, blah. And I don't feel that way about my drinking self. Like, I look at her and I'm like, man, like, you really were doing your best. Like, and your best was really not great sometimes, but like, you lived, because like, you really, really, really lived through that. And the other reason that I say that is because like, I reserve my right as a sober person to make bad decisions. Like, I don't think that because I'm in recovery, that means that like I'm always going to make good decisions and act perfectly, because that is certainly not true at all.
1,000%. I also think like doing a big grand before and after gesture is not really that helpful, because not everybody looks like that in a stage that they need help. Like, you can be super high functioning and still have a really unhealthy relationship with something and actually be wanting to break out of that. But if you don't see anything that reflects that back to you, then you're constantly around people telling you that your relationship to alcohol or whatever is normal, but you don't feel like it's normal. But
Mm.
I just don't think it's that. Like, that was also an issue for me. I was like, am I a high functioning alcoholic? I definitely was. I still consider myself to be, looking back. But at the time, all that you would hear about was like people who would drink mouthwash when they had nothing left to drink in the house. And I'm like, okay, so I'm not mouthwash bad, but I am like, I'll drink whatever's in the house, no matter what it is, but I'm not mouthwash bad. So I think it is a journey and a spectrum. And also, I don't know about you, but sometimes I still struggle. Like, sometimes I'll be at a particular, if I'm really run down or I'm really stressed out or I'm at an event I don't want to go to, and my social battery is drained, then I struggle. I'm like, it's hard again. And I find and it's not, I don't ever regret. Like, I'm always so proud of myself for being a non-drinker. Like, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. But like, healing's not linear. Like, in those occasions, it's like those old little voices, they're back again. It takes
100%.
time.
Yeah, and like I'm obsessed with the phrase "I'm not mouthwash bad," because like everybody's got that little line, and what I find is so funny is like I just kept crossing those little lines, and then I just find a new one. Like like it's so true, and I really 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 relate to that, like high functioning, and I believe that like ambition, being high functioning and putting on the mask, is like a dimension of my addiction, because like I was so obsessed with being perfect. Like I was so obsessed with being, that perfect girl that everyone would love, that I just like knitted myself together so tight. And it was like this like kind of schizophrenia, like between those two people, like, the outside Lauren who was at Yale doing a degree in opera and like, look at me, I'm so good. And this inside Lauren that was like screaming, like, please love me. Like, why does no one fucking love me? Like, why is no one helping me? Like it was so difficult. And in recovery, like to speak kind of to, what you were saying about like the still struggling, like I honestly believe that like everybody has like a certain set of issues that, appear on a recovery journey as a curriculum at, different times. So for me, and like so I got sober in a relationship and we broke up about 2.5 years into my sobriety. And the way my like love life and sex life, shall we say, became an unmitigated disaster overnight. Like the way that I was, using people and being used and just going into these like, really old patterns of being in Ubers at 3 a.m., going to strangers' houses, like 2.5 years sober, mind, like sober as a judge, like just doing like things that potentially put me in danger because like I just really, really, really needed to like, be like with someone. I needed to be wanted. And so it wasn't until I was 3 years sober and had like a complete rock bottom around like how I viewed sex and what sex meant to me, and I was kind of like, at the time, like a little bit humiliated because like I was like, am I not supposed to be better at life? Like, why am I catatonic on my couch crying my way through The Pisces by Melissa Broder because, 45-year-old photographer has ghosted me after talking to me for 2 weeks, like, and it was like it was a level of devastation that I was so unprepared for. But it was just like it was like kind of a breaking point where something had come to my attention where it was like, you don't have relationships in normal ways. I just read Creep by Emma von Straten, and like it was just like a little bit too close for comfort. Like I was just like, not that I have not stalked anyone, like I just want to make that very clear. But like the way that she described obsession and love, I was like, girl, that's me in 2020. Like the way that I was like just fixated on this idea of I get this, I will be fine. I want to like crawl inside you. And like, like, and maybe for some people that happens in their first year. For me, it happened 3 years in.
Did you ever navigated a breakup sober before? That's
That
really
that was it.
unimaginable.
Yeah, never. I had a big breakup. So prior to that breakup, canonical breakup, shall we say, 2000 and God, who remembers? 17. He was just this absolutely wonderful guy. There's certain relationships in my life where, it's kind of like a mutually destructive experience. There were some relationships where like I deserved better than I got, and that's all I'll say about that. And this relationship was one where like you could see from space that like I was the toxic one, and he was, really just trying to, love me. And I was just like, why the fuck are you trying to love me? Leave me alone. But also like love me. Like, it was just one of those things.
Like
And
a cat.
yeah, exactly. Oh, 100%. So like, and I remember when he broke up, like when we broke up in 2017, like I was smashed, like I was pulverized because he was like the only good thing in my life. And literally it was, for me, it was one of those examples of, yeah, see, you don't deserve good things. You had a good thing and now you ruined it. And it was just like I was like, great, now it's a perfect excuse to ruin my life. And ruin my life I did. Like I had someone like, in my bed like and 2 hours after the fact because I was just like, I can't cope with how I am feeling right now. I can't cope with what I'm doing. And like I kept just, trying to like get rid of the bad feeling. And I was like on my couch and I was just like on Tinder and I was just trying to like find someone, anyone. And then I found this guy who was like coming through town, and I was like, yeah, come over. And he was like, do you want to like FaceTime first and like see like if we like, and I was like, no, come over. Like, do it. Like, you gotta come over. And so he came over, and I'm on my couch, and I'm watching Desperate Housewives, which is one of my favorite shows ever. And I'm drinking like a handle of vodka, and I'm like putting it into like LaCroix cans, like so that it's classy. And this guy comes in, and he's just like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, we will have sex now." And he's like, I don't want to do that. Like, you're not okay. And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm totally fine. This is what a fine woman looks like. And he was just like, yeah, no, this is unethical. And like, I sat on the couch with that guy watching Desperate Housewives, like crying on him for hours. So like that's how I dealt with really like breakups before. And my sober breakup was, I was kind of veering down that same pattern of just like needing other people to make me feel okay. But because I was sober, I was able to be like, this is a pattern. This is I'm now I have the awareness and awareness action, right? Like, you get the awareness and you're like, fuck, like, can I live with this? And you can delude
Now
yourself.
you got to feel your feelings though. And that's really shitty.
100%. And that is the recovery experience that I want to talk about. Like I always want to talk about these moments where like you have those soul crushing realizations where like, oh
God, there's no way around it.
because then what happens? You deal with the pattern, it's uncomfortable, and then something wonderful happens. Like I took a 9 months off dating after that kind of emotional rock bottom. Then I started dating again. It's not to say that dating was easy, but it was fun.
It would have been better not being drunk. Oh my God, I had some bad dates when I was
Oh yeah?
like before I got sober. Just really embarrassing. I mean, I think one of the main reasons I ended up deciding I needed to get sober was I was so embarrassing. Like I'm really quite introverted. Like I'm extroverted one-on-one, but like quite introverted generally. I've ADHD and I find it very stressful actually, like being in bars and everything.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I would do such embarrassing things. I would like say stuff or hit on people I would never hit on. And like just that morning, like waking up in the morning being like, what the fuck did I do this time? Or like,
Yeah.
what did I say? What God, it's so embarrassing. It is such a joy to be fully in control of my own faculties. My favorite thing ever is being able to drive myself to the function so I can leave whenever I want. Like, that's my favorite because it's like, yes, you're going to be like, have some social anxiety when you go there, but it's like made better because I know I can just leave when I want. Like, I don't have to stay because I'm not drunk. I can leave if I want to.
What
And
if
no one's going to notice because everyone else is drinking. So
no one cares either? Oh my God.
they don't.
The return of my agency is like the most exquisite thing about my recovery. And like that's not to say that I deserved any of the abuse or any of the, the violations. Like because I can have as much agency as possible and those things still might happen. But like the fact that like even on like the micro scale of like, oh my God, I can leave whenever I want. I can literally just do that. And yeah, like that is it's just one of the most absolutely empowering things of like agency, like an effort. Like I get to choose where I put my effort today because I was a very embarrassing drunk as well. I have this memory of like I was in a show and we had this after party and it was in a really fancy hotel and I wasn't in the third act of the show. So I just spent the third act getting drunk, did bows drunk, like blackout for bows. And then I put on like for this like industry event, like I put on the sluttiest, like, and like, I love a slutty bodycon dress. Like, do not get me wrong. Like I still to this day love a slutty bodycon dress. That is part of my agency. I am allowed that. But it's not appropriate for an industry event, like with 80-year-olds, like to be dressed in that way when everybody else is in like tea dresses. So I put on this like, sheer like panel like dress. And then I'm rolling about on these couches, like crying about how I want to be a virgin again. Like, and it's just, and I had to be taken out before like the big benefactors came because like I was very visibly in this show. And then I was like smoking outside and sending like Snapchats to people like opera singers shouldn't do this. Like, and it just, and I attribute that to the fact that like cocaine was never my drug. And I think that because sobriety was aided by that, because the things that I did were so humiliating and like falling asleep on bars, like, and I just never could get cocaine to work for me. Like I'm definitely like more of a downers person. But if I like got that right and I stayed alert enough and like present enough, because like a lot of my friends who have that, like, that was a big part of their story. Like, they would do coke to keep drinking and they did fewer embarrassing things. But because like I was largely, I just like fell into embarrassing so fucking quickly. There was like just this absolute point of no return. And that point just kept getting nearer and nearer and nearer.
Oh, yeah, I relate. I deeply, deeply relate to that. I've always been more of a downers girl. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because if your brain is going and you're an inherently creative person and you need to shut it up for a bit, maybe that's why. I feel like Coke would only be bad news for me, my constitution. So, what did early sobriety look like for you? What was like the day or the moment that you were like, right, I got to turn this shit around?
I love talking about this moment because it was really an inexplicable moment for me because so many people had tried to help me before and I just wasn't available to hear it. Like I had this I worked in a company where there was another singer who he had been sober for a very long time. He got sober very young and he saw me struggling and he said to me, would you be interested in hearing my story? And I'm like, yeah, sure, tell me your story. And, he told me, and I was like, that's amazing. Like, what did you do? And he was like, well, I got sober and accepted this help. And I was like, yeah, but I don't need to do that. And he was like, you don't need to do anything, but like, if you want to get sober, like I can help you. And I was just like, I had this like upsurge of like enthusiasm where I was like, okay, I'm gonna get sober. And then I remember I started drinking very shortly after, again, like after that, and him like coming into a practice room, and I'm like drunk in this practice room at 11 o'clock, like practicing the piano, and and then he comes in, and I'm like, oh my God, I love being sober. I love being sober. This is so good. And he could like visibly see that I was drunk, and he was just, he didn't judge, he didn't like lecture, he was just like, okay, like, we'll talk later. And he was willing to do so much for me, and I was just, not willing to get sober. But like and pretty much that exact story happened many, many, many times. But my moment of readiness is an inexplicable one because I was I was in a show, Die Zauberflöte, the magic flute, and my body had kind of reached this critical mass of how much a body could handle. And I'd been scared into doing the tech week sober. And because of alcohol's effects on my body and the withdrawal symptoms, and because I was losing my mind, like I was just unraveling so hard and was completely unaware of how heinous my mental health was. The process of getting chemically or physically sober created this like kind of collapse inside me, and it was like it was a physical collapse as well. Like, and so I was in the rehearsal and I like ran off stage and I was like in the corner of the dressing room, like heaving and crying and like hearing voices. This evil voice in my head said, your mother will have a dead daughter. And I just like freaked out. So then I went to the doctors and, they said, we're going to get you help. And for some reason, I will never know why, this this feeling came over me that said, you're done. You're done. You need to take that help. You are done. And that's not to say that like from that moment that I've been, I have willingly like danced into my sobriety without any like issues. But there was this really overwhelming sensation of it's time to live. And there's many words for it. People could call it God, people could call it my soul, people could call it my spirit. Like I think that a lot of, we could call that moment many things and it would, depend on semantics. But like I think there's a version of it, like it could have been my higher self, it could have been my logical self. Like, I flip about how I choose to see that moment, but I do think that it was like, as I describe in the book, like it's the rebellious, tenacious, unbreakable thing inside me that was like, you will not be taken under because you have work to do. There are things to do. You are not going out like this, my friend. And not everyone has that moment. Like that moment is very particular to me. Like some people have their own variation of that moment, but it's kind of just that soul snap. What was it like for you? Did you have a moment like that?
I did. Sort of in another way
Yeah.
where I had also been trying to manage my drinking for years,
Mm.
like doing things like dry July or dry January or whatever, and like being tormented through the
Mm.
month, like just barely dragging myself through to the end of the month and hating every single second of it, like kicking and screaming and just fantasizing about what was going to be on the other side. So
Mm.
I had dabbled with that. I had tried moderation, like tried all sorts
Mm.
of mind games of like, I'll only drink on the weekend, or maybe I'll only have one, or I'll only have two. And I realized that that didn't work for me either, because
Mm.
all I would do was, it was just like then putting it on a pedestal, and it made me obsess about the drink even more because it was now so scarce. And like my whole week would be, I'd be so excited about the moment where I could finally drink if it was the weekends, or if it was the weekdays, I would be holding out, just like waiting till it was barely socially acceptable for me to crack the one and only drink. And then I couldn't even enjoy it because I'd be worrying about, oh my God, it's almost over, and like it's not enough, and like what am I going to do now after it's done, and what's the point, because it's not even going to make me feel anything. It was just this, it was so ridiculous, so insane. And I think, what did I must have read something. I think I started like exploring around this stage, and like for me, my drinking for me when it was at its worst was probably, and this is why I like when I talk about high functioning, or talk about like wanting more representations of what a bad alcohol relationship looks like, I would drink 4 to 6 beers in the evening, and then have like 2 or 3 straight whiskeys at the end. And I would lie to my partner about how much I was drinking, which was,
oh my God,
that is huge red flag. He'd be like, what beer is that? And I'd say it was 2, but it was actually 4 or 6 maybe. Lying about that.
easier, didn't they? Like when it's like lying is so like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
The shame, because I'm embarrassed. It's like, I don't want to tell you because I know it's bad.
Yeah.
And you're just going to judge me. I'm
Yes.
judging myself. That's why I'm lying. I know. And I don't know where I read it, but at some point I realized I was waking up with a hangover every day. Like even on a Tuesday, I would be hungover, and I looked terrible. Like I looked so puffy and like blotchy, and I looked just unhealthy. I felt like shit, and all I could think about all day, every day was when it was early, reasonable hour of the afternoon to start drinking. Like I had a rule, it had to be after lunch, but like, you know, that was it. After that, all bets were off. And it's like my granddad, which is, I was chuckling when you were talking about growing up in Scotland and having like the resident alcoholic, because my mum is Scottish and my granddad is Scottish, and they live here now, but he is such a Scot, and he is our resident alcoholic. He's like cracks the bottle at 11 a.m. and will drink wine till he goes to bed at 7 p.m. Like he's our and I'm always like, oh, I'm not as bad as granddad, but I was getting as bad as granddad, which was not great. Yeah. And at some point I think I realized I must have read something, but that moderation was just never ever going to work for me. Moderation had to not be an option. I had to completely remove it, take it off the table. It just had to be completely teetotal. And it had to be longer than a month, because that didn't work. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do it for 3 months, then I might as well, it'll only be like, I'll have just gotten through the hard part, like by the end of the 3 months, and then I'll be giving myself permission to drink again. So being insane, being Capricorn and also ADHD, I was like, I'm going to do a year.
Yeah.
So I like committed to a year and set a challenge with a star chart, and I announced it to the world. I told my family. Everyone laughed in my face. I'm not joking. They literally laughed in my face and were like, whatever, you're never going to make it. And I was like, so of course that just fueled my rage and made me double down in my resolve. I didn't actually think I was going to make it either, but
really,
I did eventually. It was really hard, and then it was less hard, and it just keeps getting less and less hard. And now it's been almost 5 years.
I mean, I love that. Like, yes, it just keeps getting less and less hard. Also, like, I've got a Capricorn moon, so it's just like, you know, try to like my motivation to do anything is like someone like doubting me, and it's just like,
Yeah.
do you know what you're dealing with here? Like, and it's so funny.
Now I have to do it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, Capricorns are like. Virgos think that they're business in the front, business in the back, but like they're business in the front, like chaos in the back. Capricorns,
we're just
business in the back, business
baby.
in the front. My Capricorn moon has a lot to answer for, is all I'm saying. But like I really, really relate to that, like especially like the early recovery experience. Like there was like an aspect of me that kind of like gamified it, like, you know, I need to get this. And like I had the same thing where I never did like a dry January. I did a dry February because I wanted to do special and different.
And it was a shorter month.
And the shortest month. But like, yeah, because I knew that like and I never completed it. Like I got like 2 weeks and I was just like, well, I feel worse. So I'm gonna, start taking my medicine again. And yeah, so it's like that idea of like, oh, I'm gonna do this. I think like I set myself 6 months. Like at first, like I was just kind of like, and I knew that I was done. I knew that I was done, but like that knowing on the day-to-day basis, like faltered and flickered. So it was kind of like, obviously, like, recovery is one day at a time, but because of my nature, it's very difficult to say one day at a time. So like I just assure myself like, just 6 months, just keep going, just keep going. And then the first time that I felt, this is not everyone's story, but it's mine. The first time that I felt like okay, like where I was just like, wow, like I think I'm just a human being who wants to be alive. It was at 9 months. At 9 months, I had this really big internal shift where I kind of just felt like a part of the world in a way that I hadn't before. And yeah, that's when it was kind of like, okay, I'm done. And I'm a bit more okay with that fact. And so, some people get a pink cloud. I did not get a pink cloud. Like like, it was non-existent. Like maybe my pink cloud came at like 3 years. I don't know. But I definitely, my first 9 months were really, really hard because everything that I'd been running from had caught up with me and I didn't know what to do.
Oh, I feel that. I did have a pink cloud for the first month.
Nice.
The first month. For those listening who don't know what a pink cloud is, it's basically like this high or sense of euphoria or excitement and enjoyment in the early stages of sobriety. And I think I also heavily incentivized myself to keep going. Like I was taking photos of my face and skin to each week, I think, because I looked like shit. Like I looked so bad. I look back at those photos, I still have them, and I look back, I'm like, I looked like ass. You wouldn't recognize me. Like I look at myself now and I still appreciate now when I look in the mirror that I look so much more alive. I'm like, I look like me, like who I'm supposed to be, like I actually do. But I knew like in the early stages to keep myself motivated, I would need some dopamine because like just mentally pushing myself through wasn't going to be enough. So I was like, well, I know that I'll only hopefully get less hideous. Like my skin will clear up and I'll be less puffy and my eyes were like yellow. Like I'm sure my liver was like under the freaking pump. Not good at all.
100%.
And so I did that. And then at every month I booked myself in for like a real bougie facial, which is a real privileged thing to do. I don't know where I got the money, but I was like, my booze money, I'm going to spend it on a facial. And that was a good idea because I just had to like reward myself constantly in those first few months because, oh, and I also didn't go out. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't do anything social for months because I knew it was going to be impossible. I knew it was just too soon to go to an event, a party or anything. I remember my first one. Do you remember your first one back socializing sober?
Oh my God, so when I was 3 months sober, maybe 4, as if it matters, but like early, like the first quarter of my first year, I got a job in Colorado and I was performing there and I was kind of in this, singer's house, which is kind of like, in America's Next Top Model, like they get put in the model house, like it was kind of like that, but with opera singers. And it was really lovely. Like those women were amazing. But I remember that I did not really go out for the first, up until that point. So I was just like, this is not going to be fun for me right now because I'm still in that space where like I don't quite know who I am without drinks. So like I don't want to put myself in that position. I tried like going out a couple of times and getting a root beer float, and I was just like, do you know what? Like I'm just gonna park this until I know myself a wee bit better, and I can meet my friends in other contexts. But I was in Colorado, and every day after a performance there was like a mixer where you would meet like again benefactors and audience members, and you kind of would be taken out as like, look at our singers, aren't they lovely? And I struggle. So I talk about this in No Lost Causes Club, where it's like I never got stage fright once in my life. Like I love being on stage, like still to this day. Like being on stage is so much fun for me. Playing a character is so much fun for me. I've never struggled with that. I struggled with the dressing room. I struggled with the mixers. I struggled with the benefactor gigs. I struggled with like talking to people. Like it was all of the stuff outside of being on stage that I struggled with. So which really suits like the writer's life, because like, you know, my job is literally just like being by myself, which is wonderful. But like because I have that like, you know, isolation propensity, like outside of that, like I really, really, really need to support myself and like sometimes engineer myself to like get out of myself and my experience. But yeah, so I was, yeah, it was horrifying. Like I was just absolutely horrified by the fact that like I had to be around people and I had to be myself. And I only went to one of them because they were optional, but it was one of those things where it was like, this is optional, but please understand that if you choose to not go, like that will be used against you. And I was like, I do not care if you never hire me ever again. I am not doing this mixer thing. But I do remember when I was about maybe 9 months sober, one of my very best friends got married. And I was living in the USA at the time. So I came back to Scotland for that wedding. And I did, like, I don't know how, do you know Ceilidh dancing? Like, oh, of course, yeah, you're Scottish. Like, of course you know Ceilidh dancing. Well, for
Yeah.
listeners that might not know Ceilidh dancing, it's like a form of like Scottish traditional dance. And like, if you go to a Scottish wedding and you hear like, you know, this bra, bum, da, 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 that you know what Ceilidh's about to start, and you know you're gonna have like the time of your fucking life. And I just remember thinking like, oh, I'm gonna have to touch people and I'm gonna have to get sweaty and like I'm gonna go back to that like, you know, teenage because we learn Ceilidh dancing for PE in school. Like it's like there's like 6 or 7 of them that you learn, like Gay Gordon's, Dash and White Sergeant, like Canadian Bar and Dance, all that stuff. And they're like in our DNA, right? Like we just kind of know them. Yeah, I remember being like, oh, I don't want to do it. Like it's gonna be so embarrassing. But then like starting dancing and just like moving and getting into my body and like moving through that embarrassment physically, I was just like, well, this is actually the most fun I've ever had in my life. Like this is absolutely incredible. You could not drag me off that dance floor. I was like, and that shocked me. Like it really shocked me.
That's so wholesome too. Like that you remember, you know, that you can now remember how that made you feel so clearly. Like you remember that moment.
Mm,
And there's so many, yeah, so many moments. Like I really realized I was so shocked after I had enough mental and emotional space from alcohol to look at it objectively, how entrenched it is into society and everything. I was like, humans are incapable of having an emotion without
mm.
having to couple it with alcohol, whether it's happy or sad. Like something good happens, you celebrate by drinking. If something bad happens, you commiserate by drinking. Like if we cannot experience an emotion without needing to drink to it. And it was really shocking. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe how much we're potentially missing out on or dulling down because we don't know how to feel our feelings.
Hey, isn't it? And I was talking about this with my flatmate a couple of days ago. She's an actress, and we're like, you know, we're very similar in temperament. Like we're pretty enthusiastic people. Like that's like something that I love that my sobriety's given me. Like I'm super fucking enthusiastic about things, and I also have a propensity to like, you know, fall down to the misery line. Like my temperament just naturally kind of flirts around that misery line. I think that's why, you know, most of my interests in literature like is like on the darker side. Like that's why I love, you know, creepy stories and dark stories and painful stories, because, you know, I always want to, you know, kind of choose the pain, like choose the sadness, because I'm so aware of the fact that like brain for a season can just be like, oh, I'm going to make you very, very, very depressed now. And there's kind of nothing that you can do about it. And I've got to be like, well, I'm going to do stuff about it. I'm going to do my yoga and my meditation, and I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm going to eat greens and proteins. But like, could you give me a break, brain? Like, could you give me a break? And but that's as much a part of my existence as the fact that like, because I, you know, I'm aware of that dark streak, and I, you know, embrace that dark streak and accept it as much a part of me as any other part. This kind of ceiling for joy and enthusiasm and appreciation, like, is absolutely fathomless. Like, you know, back to my flatmate, like, we were just showing each other, like, you know, YouTube recordings of like things we watched as kids that made us think, like, wow, the world is amazing. Like things that gave us a sense of wonder. And, she literally she called me, and because she was coming home, and I was like, are you okay? What's going on? And she was like, come downstairs now. And I like, scampered downstairs, and she was just like, look at this sourdough. It's perfect. And like that, because that's the type of people that we are. Like a sourdough, like the perfect sourdough is as much as a celebration as anything. And I love that like this is a product of my sobriety, because like a product of my addiction is nothing is enough. Like absolutely nothing is enough. I need to feel the most, or I need to feel nothing. Those are my options. And now it's kind of like I feel everything. Like I feel a deep sense of sadness and loneliness sometimes that takes a while to shift. And I also like see the face of God in a sourdough. That's been sober. It's amazing.
I agree. I feel like I'm like so much more emotional now, but like
Mm.
not in terms of crying all the time, but I do feel things, really like genuinely feel things. I'm like so touched by the kindness of people, like when people are nice, which does happen
It does.
despite the horrors. There is a lot of great people in this world.
Right.
And even just on Instagram, when someone will send me a message like, hey, I saw this book and I thought of you, I'm like, that's the nicest thing ever. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you saw something and you thought of me. People are so nice. Like, just, I don't know. I feel like I appreciate things and I feel things so much more deeply. But then, yes, on the flip side of that, like when there's the horrors, then I
Yeah.
feel that too. But you know, to have one is to have the other, it seems. And I don't think I really felt any of that before when I was
Mm.
drunk. Like the drink was the point. And if you feel, you just drink more and then go to bed.
Oh my God, 100%. And just that like pathological need to like control the feeling. Like
Yep.
and I'm really touched by what you said about human kindness, because I think that's what one of my survival strategies like is human kindness. And I didn't really see, because like we could talk for like, hours about this, but one of the hardest things about writing the book is like pretty much the day that I signed my book contract, like the book deal, like Matthew Perry died. And I was like,
Ugh.
oh wow, this feels sinister. And then I went to Hungary to start writing the book. I went to Budapest because I was like, I'm gonna get away and get some space. And on that trip, that was like the beginning of like a nearly 2-year genocide. I just like, watching those incomprehensible horrors, like, and I hate the fact that like incomprehensible horrors like doesn't even cover it anymore.
No.
Just inconceivable cruelty. Writing a book about sobriety where it's like, I was just like, I had I stopped, like, my spirituality is a really big part of my life. I stopped believing in God because I was just like, fuck this. And I spent like 3 months writing this book. Like, why the fuck am I writing a book about the goodness of people, and the virtue in being present for things, and the finding the tenacity to go on, when I don't feel that right now. Like I don't feel that. Like I'm looking at the world like in disgust and pain. It's like that just was like such a weird experience, because like I was talking to my editor, and she was like, oh, what do you got for me? And I was like,
Tears.
yeah, like I have like I'm writing a book about hope when I have lost hope. So that was probably, the most challenging parts about it. But like, I really just had to like wrench it out of me. I was like, right, like, you've refused to go under before, like, and you're not in a position to go under right now. Actually, you live a very comfortable life. Like, you're not having your rights stripped from you, and you're not in any immediate threat of danger. What are you going to do about it? Like, how do you want to proceed now? And and I do think like continuing sometimes is literally all we can do. And, taking those tiny actions to, leave the world better than we found it and make it a gentler place for people who are in trouble is like literally We can do. And, that I guess that's like the kind of conclusion that I came to. I was like, sobriety allows me to simply just do what I can, because like destroying myself in response to destruction is what the world wants. Because I do believe that like we are capable of incredible change. Like on the individual level, like we probably can't save the world. Like life is not a superhero movie. Like I cannot save the world, but I can make my tiny changes to it. And, imperialist world really just benefits from hypersensitive people destroying themselves in the face of their agenda. And I was like, do you know what? Like, fuck that. Like, I'm going to stay sober. I'm going to write this book. I'm hating writing this book right now because it doesn't feel right. But by the time I finished it, I was like, you know what, this is what I've got. And it is that there are incomprehensible horrors, but there is inconceivable kindness as well. And just like tuning up my radar to seeing in my community, in my space, in history, in humanity, just where like bravery. Oh my God, when I see someone being brave now, that makes me cry. Like bravery makes me cry, whether it's physical or moral bravery. I'm just like, yes, more of this, please.
I agree. I agree. I saw a video on Reddit like a couple of days ago of this coffee shop worker in the States, I think it was, who had like unionized the all the staff, and they were walking off the job, and he was reading out their speech, and he was like shaking like a leaf, clearly terrified, but he stood there and he was so like powerful in his voice, and he had his colleague beside him who just put his hand on his back to steady him, and it honestly made me emotional because I was like, you were terrified. I know. I'm like, you were petrified and you are doing it anyway. And for the good of your people, like for the good of your community and your colleagues. And like, I feel like at the moment we have to cling on to these little, strands of hope that
Yeah.
not all hope is lost. Like not everything. There can be positivity, hopefully. It's just that all the wrong people are in power. But something else you said too, I reshared this post yesterday that really made me think of what you were just saying, where it was a tweet and he said, or a thread or something, and he said, if you have any semblance of a moral compass right now, you're going to be feeling fucking terrible about the state of the world, but don't mistake that and let that make you hate yourself or something like that. Like don't like misconstrue your bad feeling for something that's wrong with you as a person. And I really feel that. I'm like, if you feel bad, that's like you're just a human, which is good. To have humanity, it's good. And with your book as well, like what you're writing about and what you've been through, that can literally save lives. Like literally save lives. I think it's so important that people hear about recovery stories in all walks of life and like how to deal with shit that happens and your feelings, because we don't know how. We are all emotionally stunted, and there is never enough quit lit, as I refer to it, or recovery literature, in my opinion. So I think your book I completely understand how you feel, because also when I opened my Substack editor, I can't write a damn thing. So I'm like, I have nothing to say. Everything sucks. But also, and I close it again. But I'm so glad you wrote your book. I'm so glad.
Oh, thank you so much. I say that in the last chapter is like someone else's story saved me. It wasn't a remarkable story. I mean, she's a remarkable woman, obviously, but like her story wasn't remarkable. It was just emotionally similar to mine. To have a vital story is not hard, because I believe that every story is vital, and we are like, I don't know, it sounds exaggerated, but it's not, because it happened to me. It's like your story can save someone, and it doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be sensational. It's, all you really have to do is kind of gently offer it. And not everyone's going to take it. And I think that's something that I've discovered along the way, the hard way, that like, you can be as generous with your story as you like, and it's still not going to reach people who aren't ready to receive it. But I just believe that, in recovery spaces, the more stories that we get from more walks of life, from more intersections, the more people that we can reach. And I just feel like that is so unbelievably important. And it's an honor to, add my own story to that. Even though Amy Lipshot has pretty much the exact same story as me, being a young Scottish woman from a farm. But like, that doesn't make my story any less valuable because you never know like who your story is going to reach.
Exactly. You've got your own experiences and your own take on it. And I think it's really interesting too, hearing from people who got sober young. Like,
Mm.
that is really interesting. And especially in this day and age where people are not choosing not to drink, younger and younger, which makes me so proud. I do believe that, like, I don't judge individuals for drinking, you do you, but I do believe that alcohol is the most damaging thing in society, but people aren't ready to have that chat. Mostly boomers are not ready to have that conversation. My God.
Aren't ready to have that conversation. And like, people aren't ready to have the conversation of like the fact that, am I even ready to have this conversation? Yes, I am. We're going in. It's just the idea that like these pervasive myths of like, that there's still like, okay, I'll speak from being Scotland, like the Celtic blood disease, right? Like the fact that like I'm prone to alcoholism because of some strange thing in my DNA. Or we're gonna call it that. Like a strange thing in my DNA. And rather than like a very, very, very complex history. Same with Irish people, same with like Indigenous people. It's like, oh, they're just like, that's just what they're like. Like, oh, well, that's very fucking convenient. And like to say that, and like the idea that I say this in the book that, there are, as someone who grew up like in a rural area that has high levels of poverty, it's like, we're not given like psychologists and psychiatrists and help. We're given pubs and bookies. Like, and that just like, that pervades over society. And like the fact that, marginalized people, like, the fact that like every queer space that you go to is like, there's just so much alcohol there. And it's like, I'm not going to get into like a like big alcohol sort of rant here, because that's not my fight. But like, it is really, really, really shocking when you notice like how alcohol industries prey on marginalized people in that way. There we go. I got into it, but I'm going to stop there because I really could go for longer.
Have you heard from any early readers yet on how they've been influenced by your story?
So, oh my God, I have blocked Goodreads and Amazon
Good.
in every country, every single country, like on my laptop, because I'm just like, I don't feel normal enough to deal with that. But lest we forget, I'm a drug addict and drug addicts always find a way. So I was like, I'm on my iPad, just like, Goodreads. And it honestly, like, it felt that there was kind of like a relapsey vibe about it. Because I was like lying to myself. I was like, it's fine, it's fine. You're breaking a boundary with yourself, but it's okay. Like, it's fine. And yeah, so I went onto Goodreads and there was a couple of reviews there, and people were just saying like, someone said like, this is a book for the sober feral goblins, written by the queen of the sober feral goblins. And I was just like,
We need that on the cover.
seriously, like we could just make that could be the blurb. Like that could be
Yeah, you should put that in your bio now. Sober feral goblin.
I really think I might, because I was so like touched by that, because like my whole thing is like, I don't want to be a guru. Like I want to be like, a fellow goblin. That's always been my role. And now that I'm a wee bit older, like I'm like an anti-goblin, but like I'm still a goblin. What can I say? And yeah, like some people who've read it like don't experience addiction themselves, but like I have had family members that have. I sometimes worry about that because like, I do a big push on humanizing the addict, but I've also got to hold in the same space that like being an addict and an alcoholic, I can wholeheartedly say I have caused people tremendous amounts of harm. And I've got to kind of hold that in the same space that like, yes, I'm fully human, and yes, I'm the villain in some people's stories. So when people, especially children of alcoholics, follow me to try and understand their parents more, like I can get a little bit spooked by that, because I'm like, I don't want to justify like any neglect in your childhood or like the adverse experiences of growing up with an alcoholic parent. But the feedback from them has been really beautiful. Like they've kind of been like, it's helped, the other side of the story that's sometimes quite hard to access. And that's something that I never thought would happen. Like I've definitely, somewhat I'm here for the drunks. Like, but it's just really it's such an honor to hear that, like, people whose lives have been impacted by alcohol outside of their own choices are getting something out of it. Like that was very emotional. I did not expect that. Or partners even. My boyfriend's not an alcoholic and he's never seen me drink. We've only been together for 3.5 years. But sometimes, like, when I'm like, I can still be just as crazy, like when I'm like not drinking. Sometimes I'm a bit crazier because I don't have like my blanket on me. And I'm just like, oh man, I'm having a bad head day. Like, did your grandfather say this? Like, sometimes like in Scotland, like when you're like just feeling under, you're like, oh, I've got a bad head. Like I've got a bad head today.
Yes.
Like, yeah. Like
Yes.
when I've got a bad heat on me, I'm just like, oh my God, how can you tolerate like dating such a damaged and broken woman? And he's just like, you're actually just a human being and everyone's capable of having a bad head. And, so some people have like fed back that as well, that it's like, it was really important for me to not like paint myself as like a victim. And I loathe to use that word because that word can be very, very charged. And like I do hold in the same space that like I have been a victim because I've been the victim of crimes, but my recovery is trying not to calcify there and be there for other people who struggle. And yeah, people are just like, saying how it's not like a doom and gloom book. Like it's a book that is full of hope. And that's exactly what I wanted.
I'm so looking forward to reading
Okay,
it because
thanks.
sobriety really gives me a lot, continues to give me a lot of hope. Like it's the one thing in my life that I'm so proud of that I mean, there's a bunch of things I'm proud of, but like a personal decision that I made just for me that I love about myself. And so reading about it, reading other people's success stories, looking at how other people find hope and find ways of leaning into this new
Mm.
aspect of your life is really interesting, really exciting. And also, yeah, I think I'm so encouraged by the appetite for people to learn more about it. Even just, yeah, with a view to maybe wanting to sometimes drink less, maybe not necessarily being completely sober, and that's fine, but maybe just like curious about drinking differently or whatever it is. Like it's
100%.
entirely everybody's journey is their own and it's all personal.
Like above all, like I'm a harm reductionist. Like I didn't understand harm reduction at first because like I knew like I want to be sober for the rest of my life, and then realizing like, oh yeah, my life was actually saved by harm reduction like on many times. So then I had to kind of be like, yeah, like I want people who, whether I am sober or not, I want people who drink and use drugs to be as safe as possible. And if sobriety is not an option for them, I still want them to be as safe as possible. And like who knows, like even if someone takes like a 9-month break from drinking, who's to say that that 9 months like period, if they were drinking, wouldn't have taken them to the place where they would have made a permanent decision, no, a temporary decision with permanent consequences, right? So like, yeah, like as I said earlier, like my story is like one day at a time. I want to stay sober for as long as I have breath because I'm loving it. But like, I also, just want people to be as safe as possible. And if that means
Mm.
like, just adjusting your relationship with drink or certain substances or taking a break and like, dealing with those things and, working out from there, like everyone is different. But the trouble is that it takes a lot of honesty with yourself to really work that out. And that's, everyone's got a different relationship to that journey.
Yes, it really does. It really does. I think I still, I guess, because for me, sobriety is so normal now because it's
Mm.
been so many years. I don't even think about it. Like I don't even hesitate to tell people or to turn down a drink. Like I don't even bat an eyelash anymore. But I have met a few people over the years who have been sober curious but very private about it and like don't want to tell anybody, which is fine. Like I'm like I would never tell like you who's it's not my business, but they'll talk to me because they know that I'm, for example, I worked in corporate for years in a large corporate advertising agency. There were multiple people over the years in this big corporate who would come and let me know that they're sober curious and they just wanted to let me know because if we've got a big function, they want to be able to like have someone that they could possibly talk to or like confide in if they maybe want to drink a water instead of a vodka, or even have me like co-sign their lie, maybe like of like, oh, this is a gin. I don't give a shit. I'll lie for you. Like if you want me to say you're drinking vodka, fine.
I'm
Like
very good at
whatever.
lying.
It's
Like lying, I'm an
yeah,
expert. Like try me.
exactly. I will do whatever you want. Like, and so that was really touching to me that like people felt they could trust me to do that, but also quite surprised. Like it surprised me and reminded me that like, oh, everybody is on their own journey. Like
I
sober curiosity looks different for everyone and good for them. Like, you know?
ever feel like so that this was in my early sobriety, and I remember when I got sober, there was this little part of me that was like, I am the most radical person. I'm the first woman who's ever got sober. I am the first young person who has ever got sober. I am the first Scottish person who has ever got sober. Those three things are just blatantly not true, but in my head, like I was just like, yeah, that's so true.
Oh yeah, I had such a God complex. Like I felt so special and better than everybody else, to be honest. Like I really did, which was so dumb in that like I was definitely becoming a better version of myself, but I was definitely not better than everybody else. I was just like so pious, but it felt like this fun little a while after a few months, it felt like I was in on this like life hack. Like this sounds so cheesy and cliche, and like I hate to even say this because it sounds like some guru bullshit. But like when after a few months, after that like 9-month mark, 12-month mark, I was like, life is so much better. Like I
Mm.
feel like I've got some secret like I don't know, to life and everything feels better. And I'm seeing things in like Technicolor now. Why does nobody know about this?
Yeah, well,
That's how I felt.
100%. Like the idea that sobriety gave me everything that I wanted drink to blew my fucking mind. And the day that it happened for me was the day that I realized that trees had leaves. And I was just like, oh my God, some leaves. I was just like, I was in rapture. I was just like, guys, are you seeing this shit? Like the trees have leaves. And yeah, it turns out that had leaves like every moment I was alive. But I never
Forever.
noticed before.
Oh, do you know something else? I don't know if this is if you would experience this too. Ever since I stopped drinking, I hardly ever get sick. I think my immune system is legitimately better, which makes sense because my liver, bless her, was doing the most before. And now she's got heaps of space to process other shit. But also, like, rarely get ill
Mm-hmm.
at all. And if I do, it's barely anything. It's like really mild.
Mm-hmm. It is that is absolutely my experience. Now, I used to have like real like I had so many health issues before I got sober. You know, for context, like I was told like at age 19, like, you know, your life expectancy is 25. Like the way that you have fucked your liver, like if you keep drinking
Yeah.
like this, like we have seen patients die at the age of 25, and we do not think that you've got long left in you. And you know, because on top of that, like I went yellow, and I remember once I was home for I was home because I like had another, you know, mental collapse, and I just had to go to like my childhood home, and I was like just slightly yellow, and my mum was like, "Oh, like this woman's my friend's coming over. Could you leave?" And I was like, "What do you want me to leave? Like I know her." And she was like, "Lauren, she's a nurse, and she'll know." Like, and that was like a really dark moment for me that I was like, oh my God, I am so visibly unwell right now that my mum is ashamed of me. And like, I don't blame her for that, and I don't shame her for that. But like, that was probably a moment that I should have got sober, but I didn't for like 5 more years. Um, and like I had chronic tonsillitis. Like I had to get my tonsils taken out because I was always sick. I was always under the weather. It was like every 4 weeks, like I would become ill. And when I moved to London, like I started working with kids again. I was like a teacher, and I remember that like kept getting colds because you know what kids are like they're little petri dishes of infection.
Petri dishes.
Yeah. And I was like, I was almost, I hesitate to use this word, but like, it's the only one that comes to my mind. But like, I was triggered, like, of like what it was like to be in my drinking days. Cause like every it wasn't 4 weeks, it was 6 weeks. Like, I'd get like a tiny cold every 6 weeks, and I'd be like, this is exactly what it was like in 2011 to 18. Like, it was so grim. And yeah, it's, oh my God.
What is one thing that you want readers to take away from No Lost Causes Club?
I want readers to take away the fact that the worst thing that ever happened to you, whatever that might be, will one day be part of a bigger story. And I have included quite a lot of the worst things that have ever happened to me in this book, in a way that, sometimes, like I said at the start, I'm just like, man, why did I say that? Like, did you really have to put that in there? But the reason that that is in there is because every single thing in that book is now just a part of my past. And my sobriety has meant that, like, I now have a bigger story. Like, and I think that's like what I want to do with everything that I write about in sobriety, where maybe not everything, I'm trying to get into fiction, but that's another story. The worst thing that's ever happened to you will one day be part of a larger story. And the longer that you keep going, those new examples keep happening. And the fact that, we just have been howling with laughter about us crashing into the human experience and how horrifying that was. Like, could you have ever imagined that when we were 7 minutes sober and wanting to claw our skin off, that one day we would laugh about that?
Literally never.
Exactly.
Like, never ever.
Yeah, I just want to make that just as clear as the fact that, yeah, getting sober is hard. Like, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to raise all the reasons sobriety is hard and, give some suggestions of what I did to, like, get through that difficulty. But at the end of every chapter is the bigger picture of, you'll laugh at this one day. Like, things change. That's the nature of things. And you're going to learn how to struggle better.
Yeah. And feel things so much more deeply, which is an unexpected side effect, I think. You don't really
100%.
realize that it is hard, but it's also like so much more vibrant than you think it's going to be.
Vibrant.
And lastly, where can people find you and where can they get a copy of No Lost Causes Club?
You can find me on Instagram at Brutal Recovery. Now, the way I say that makes it sound like brittle recovery. I found that out the hard way. So BRUTAL Recovery, that is my Instagram. You can find me on Substack, Grace and Grits Realistic Recovery, or just Lauren McQuistin. I am the only Lauren McQuistin in the world, which is quite fun.
Really?
It just makes me think, like, why didn't I use a pseudonym? But then again, anonymity was never an option. So yeah, if you Google Lauren McQuistin, that's me. Like, that's literally just me.
There can only be one.
I also I've got a Patreon as well. That's under Brutal Recovery. What else? I think that's it. Like, yeah, I'm all over that. I'm not on TikTok. I can't use it. I'm sorry. Video content is so scary to me, and I've never had a Twitter. So you can find me on Instagram, Substack, and Patreon.
Thank you so much for joining me, Lauren. It's been so great to get to know you and to chat to you over the internet instead of just DMing on Instagram. Thanks so much for listening to Sick Sad Lit. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really loved it, leaving a quick review helps other readers and writers find the show. And if you want to keep the conversation going, come hang out with us in the Sick Sad Friends Discord book club. Come for the books, stay for the friends. You'll find the link in the show notes below. Until next time, thanks for listening.